IVM.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories, India's very own travel podcast, where each week we share the journey of travelers in their own words and relive their experiences with you, our listeners.
Hey guys, welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories. Hope you're all well and keeping safe. Before we jump on to today's episode, a quick announcement.
We are delighted to announce that the Musafir Stories host network, in other words, our home IVM podcast, is turning 7 years this month. Woo! Happy birthday!
IBM has been a pioneer in the Indian podcasting space and has given us some of our favorite shows so far. A big kudos to IBM for leading from the front, and we are ever grateful to be a part of this family. Looking forward to many more years together.
On today's episode, we talked to Tanisha Guin, a social impact professional and a passionate traveler, as she shares her experiences slow traveling in a quaint border town in West Bengal. Let's hop onto the episode and find out more.
So, with that introduction, we'd love to welcome Tanisha Guin, a traveler and blogger who blogs at stepsandstreets.com. Thanks so much, Tanisha, for being on the podcast. I know we've been planning this for a while, but glad that this has finally come to fruition. But Tanisha, the intro I gave about you was pretty short and concise. So why don't you speak a little bit more about yourself and your blog?
Thank you for inviting me over to this episode on Musafir Stories podcast. I'm very grateful to be on this platform. So my name is Tanisha Guin. I'm based out of Mumbai, India. And I work in the social impact sector where I work with underprivileged communities. And when I'm not working, I prefer traveling and I love exploring heritage destinations. I love traveling solo and going offbeat. I am also into community-based tourism. I try to look for experiences that are run by local communities in a responsible way of travel.
Wonderful. Glad to hear that. And yes, we'll make sure to link Tanisha's blog as well, stepsandstreets.com. And like Tanisha mentioned, has some lovely travelogues and stories about her travels to often these offbeat destinations. And really looking forward to chatting more about one such destination today as well, Tanisha. Why don't you tell us and our listeners where you're taking us to today?
Well, through this episode, we will be virtually traveling to Mirik, which is an offbeat town. It's a hill town in the northern part of West Bengal. I'm pretty sure you haven't heard of this destination before. So together, we will be traveling to Mirik today.
Wonderful. And you're right on the money, Tanisha. I had not heard about Mirk before we started our discussions about this episode. So, really looking forward to this conversation. But just for some of the others who might be wondering where exactly Mirk is and how to get there, would you kind of give us a quick overview of the place and getting to Mirk as well?
Mirik is in close proximity to Siliguri, which is again known as a transit town. It's the hub if you want to go further towards northeast, towards Sikkim. And Mirik, like to reach Mirik, you have to travel from Siliguri to Mirik. So it's a 2.5 hour drive, and that is how you can reach Mirik.
Yeah, and also very close proximity to Darjeeling, right? So for anybody who's
Right.
already making a trip to Darjeeling, I think it makes sense to perhaps carve out a couple of days or more and visit Mirk as well. We'll definitely touch upon that during our conversation. But thanks so much for calling this out. In terms of when one should visit Mirk, you already mentioned that this is a hill town, so I'm assuming weather-wise this is going to be pretty moderate and pretty salubrious around the year. But when do you suggest is a good time to visit, and when did you visit?
Well, the best time to visit Mirik is from March to November. Even during the rains, it's a pleasant sight to be in Mirik, and the summer is also a very good time because from Mirik you get to see the Kanchenjunga. So on a clear day, you can see Kanchenjunga for good 3-4 hours, which is again a rarity because it's mostly hidden from clouds. Like most people go to Darjeeling to see Kanchenjunga, but you can see it from Mirik. So that would be the best time. And of course, winters in any hill town is a wonderful feeling. So March to November is considered to be the ideal time.
Yeah, thanks so much for setting us up with some context around Merrick, how to get there, and when is a good time to get to Merrick as well. Now, let's jump into the details of the conversation and try to find out a little bit more about your trip, your journey to Merrick as well, right? What were you looking for when you made this trip, and how long of a trip was this?
Okay, so I visited Mirik in the month of November, and we are basically we come from West Bengal and we are Bengalis. So for Bengalis, Mirik is a transit town, and I visited Mirik with my family. So when I pitched them the idea of okay, let's explore this offbeat town called Mirik, they were like, "Why do you want to visit Mirik? We would rather go to Darjeeling because it's on the way to Darjeeling." And I was like, no, that's why I want to visit it because let's see what this place has to offer. So when we were looking at Mirik, we didn't really do, like, we did the basic research of what the itinerary is going to be like, what is the type of experience that we are looking at, but we didn't specifically go with the mind okay, we have to look at this 5-6 points definitely. So the only thing that we were looking at when we planned the trip to Mirik was we want to indulge in local experience. We want to know the place inside out like a local. So for that, we decided on a 7-day itinerary. We spent good 7 to 8 days in Mirik.
Wonderful. And like you're saying, it is a transit town and falls en route. Perhaps from Siliguri to Darjeeling, when one is making a trip, you could choose to pass through Mirik. So that way it has traditionally been a transit town, and also, I understand, a very popular place for trading of goods, right? For people working in these tea estates, coming down with their produce, or even just for purchasing other goods and stuff. Coming down to Mirik has always traditionally been like a hotspot for such trading activities and stuff like that, and also very close to the Nepali border too, I understand.
Right.
Yeah, so
Yes, so you're absolutely right. Mirik is very closely located to Nepal, and it's actually one of the frontier towns between the India and Nepal border. So, which is why there is a lot of cultural exchange also that's happening, and which is what makes Mirik very interesting. So, most people, most people coming from Kolkata or West Bengal who travel to Darjeeling, don't stay at Mirik for more than 2 to 3 hours. But then the whole idea of talking and sharing stories about Mirik today is that I really want to tell tales of this town and encourage people to spend at least a day or maybe more than that to experience this and this town and experience the local taste of travel it has to offer. So it is so much more than a transit town. It's so much more than the Sumendu Lake. There's so much more to offer and to see here in this place.
okay, wonderful, and glad we're talking to you, given that you spent a good chunk of time there. About a 7-day itinerary. So we're really keen on finding out how you went about it, and tell us a little bit more in terms of what your plan was for these 7 days and how you spent your time there.
When we reached Mirik, we had our stay booked at Hamrogar. It's a homestay that is run by a local family there in Mirik, and they've been staying there for generations now. So we couldn't have had a better local host. We went through their page and we found a lot of good experiences when it came to cooking local cuisine, knowing about the flora and fauna of the place, going for offbeat hiking trails that most locals would also not venture into. So all of these experiences combined like encouraged us to book a stay with Hamroghar.
All right, wonderful to hear that you got a chance to actually spend time at Hamroghar, right, the homestay as well, because living with locals gives you a chance to have that authentic experience, and also enhances the overall experience of your stay while exploring the region as well, because they give you little nuances and stories behind a lot of things that you may not know if you're just by yourself without the background, right? So it's great
Right.
that you did that. Just in terms of the itinerary and the things that you indulged in while at Mirik. I think one of the most popular spots that I saw from while looking up Mirik was the lake, the Mirik Lake, or the Sumendu Lake, as it's popularly known. Do you want to talk
Right.
about that, given that it is one of the primary points in Mirik, and also to the passerby, I guess that's one of the things that stands out most. Do you want to touch upon that, Anisha?
Yes, we were living in the heart of the town. So the Sumendu Lake is what we woke up to every morning. And since I love traveling offbeat, I didn't really look forward to visiting Sumendu Lake much. But since we were in the vicinity, we did pay a visit a couple of times. I wouldn't say there's a lot to see near the lake, but then what I liked the most about visiting Sumendu Lake was there's a couple of activities always going on in and around the lake. And while we were there was a fair, like a local fair that was being hosted, and that created a lot of buzz. So everyone from the town came and gathered at the lake. So for us it was a really good experience because we got to talk to a lot of locals. We also played the tambola there, and we weren't very fortunate to win anything in the game, but then it was a good experience because the numbers were being called out in the local language, which is Nepali. And it's a different experience when you play it with strangers in a massive crowd, and everyone is cheering in some language, but there's also a common exchange of gestures, and you talk to people despite of knowing the same language. And we speak Bengali. We could see how much connection there is. Like, there are a lot of similar language exchanges when it comes to Nepali and Bengali. So that was a very good experience for us.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And just the lake itself, right? It's pretty scenic. And I understand it's a man made lake. Actually, I was quite surprised by that. And previously, it was supposed to be a marshland, but apparently a man made lake. And just the visual side of it, right? The beautiful scenery, and it's surrounded by
Yes,
some of these. Pine and thupi trees, I guess is what they're called
right,
as well. So that view is also brilliant. And there's also this little bridge or pull, as you call it, right? There's
right.
that as well. So overall, just a very scenic spot for somebody to spend time at.
For the locals, it's a good time to wind down. And of course, the lake offers great scenery. And on a clear day, you can also see the Kanchenjunga from the lake. So, yes, it is a scenic spot, but then it's not all of what Mirik has to offer. More on that, we'll come to that in the later part of the episode.
Oh yeah, definitely. I guess this is one of the most commercial aspect of Mirik. I
Right.
guess, right? Given that it's actually catered to the crowds that perhaps considered a little more touristy, right? So it's catered to them. So definitely, if you have time, and especially if your itinerary is a longer one, make sure that you check out the Sumendu Lake, or the Mirik Lake as it's known as. And Tanisha, if I'm not wrong, is the I Love Mirik sign? There's a big sign. It's also around the spot, around the lake, I believe, right?
No, it's not near the lake. It's actually at Tingling Viewpoint. So Tingling Viewpoint, you would be crossing Tingling Viewpoint while you enter Mirik, and the viewpoint is beautiful, and that's where the I Love Mirik sign is there. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay, maybe I crossed my wires a little bit, but yeah. Now that we're at talking about viewpoints, maybe we can touch upon the tingling viewpoint as well, right? There's a bunch of
Right.
these, I guess, that you pass through while you're driving from Siliguri, or even the other way around, right, towards Darjeeling. There's a bunch of these viewpoints that you run across, and obviously gives you a lovely view of the Kanchenjunga ranges, right? The mountains. That's one of the expected things. But the other important thing, especially in this part of West Bengal, is also the tea gardens, right? I'm sure some of the viewpoints give
Right.
you brilliant views of the tea gardens as well. Yeah.
So from the Tingling viewpoint, you get a great view of the tea estates that surround the outskirts of Mirik, and also you get to see the glimpse, like a clear view of the mountains that border Nepal. So that, and a lot of greenery, of course. On a nice foggy day, it's beautiful to drive through Tingling viewpoint and enter Mirik, because it's like a foggy forest welcomes you to the town. So that's a different scenery altogether.
Yeah, I'm definitely sure about that. And yeah, like I was mentioning, there's a couple other viewpoints as well. Semana viewpoint, I understand, is another popular of the viewpoints. Yeah.
Yes, so Simana viewpoint is actually away from the like the central part of Mirik. So like Simana, from the name itself, it suggests that it's a border. So Simana viewpoint is at the border of India and Nepal. So from that viewpoint, you can actually do a land border crossing.
Okay.
So you just cross the land and you are at Nepal. So you come to the Ilam district of Nepal. So it's like a 5 to 10 minutes walk, and that's where the Simana viewpoint is. So on when we had visited the viewpoint, we couldn't really see the snow peaks, but on a clear day again, you can see the snow peaks, and the place is like, it's like poetry. It's beautiful, like it's breathtaking. It's totally offbeat. Not a lot of people go there. You'll see locals. You'll on your way, you'll come across a lot of tea estates, a lot of coniferous trees, jungles at a stretch, and then comes the Simana viewpoint, and it'll just blow your mind. So
Yeah, wonderful. I think it's a great thing to, especially when you're driving through these places. Viewpoints actually offer much needed stop from time to time, and obviously you get to sink in and take in all of these beautiful sceneries of not just the mountains but also the tea estates and the tea gardens underneath, right? So great that you got a chance to experience some of this as well. Any other spots you'd like to call out, Tanisha?
There's the tea estate called Gopaldhara Tea Estate. It is touristy. It is on the tourist circuit, but not as compared to the ones that's flooded with tourists. Only people who are keen to explore Mirik would go there. So again, that's a very interesting place, because you get to see how things work in a tea estate, and you can again like meet locals who are not very averse with the sight of tourists coming in. So again, if you sit there for some tea, and the tea that you get there is, it's the best produce that you could get, like it's directly from the tea estate. So over some chai, you can get indulge in some really good conversations, some meaningful ones that will tell you more about the place, about the similarities between India and Nepal, and how people living through the border, what their life is like in a frontier town. So all those conversations can happen in the tea estate.
Yeah, there's a number of these, and even just around, obviously, Darjeeling and Kalimpong and the surrounding places have a number of these tea estates and the area in general. But just even around Mirik, right, there's supposed to be like 6 or 7 very popular tea estates, and
Right.
Gopaldhara is actually one of the important ones, and Turbo, Sureni, Singhmuli, Oketi, and there's
And
a
even
number of these. Yeah,
Goldricks is
Goldricks.
the
Yeah.
most it has the most commercial value.
Yeah, so if you're visiting or if you're in the area, obviously making a visit to a tea estate and like Tanisha mentioned, trying to understand the process of tea making, that's also quite interesting to check out and also has a very rich history, right? Just the area in terms of how it started off. It dates back to several hundred years and has been actually growing tea. I think around the time the Britishers came here, that's when it's really kicked off commercially. They started to grow a lot of tea, so learning a little bit about the history and just the overall process of tea making and the nuances, the different, even the different types of tea. Right, there's not just like one type of tea that's produced, and the types of tea also vary by the season or the flush, like they call it out. So if you're interested in finding out more about that, a trip and a tour around a tea estate definitely does make sense. And what next to Tanisha? Like any other experience you'd like to call out?
I hadn't really visited a monastery.
Hmm.
So, like the one I visited was Room Taken Sikkim, which was when I was 2 years old. So that's barely any memory that I could recall. So while I had planned the itinerary for Mirik, I definitely wanted to visit the Bokar monastery, and we were very glad to see that the monastery was just behind Hamroghar. So anytime there's a prayer going on, or we could see monks passing by and we could hear them chatter, and it's always a good sight to, like, you exchange gestures, you exchange smiles with them, and one or the other leads to a different conversation. So being in that vicinity added to it. So when we visited the Bokar monastery, it's known to be, it's at the highest vantage point in Mirik. So it offers a great view, and we visited during the sunset. So I think if you're looking forward to visit the monastery, either go during their early morning prayers or during the sunset. It's a great sight because you see the monks indulging not just in meditation but also in everyday activities. There's also a school there where volunteers from across the world, they come in either for meditation, or they spend months volunteering, like teaching the monks basic English, mathematics, or even football. So it was a great sight. It was not just about, oh, visiting a monastery that's scenic, that offers a great viewpoint, but it was also about knowing about the culture of monks, about how they go about their everyday activities, engaging in conversations with them. And you also get to meet new people there, because there are a lot of international travelers who come to Mirik just to spend time in the Bokar monastery. So that is one place I absolutely loved. The solitude that the place offers is, like we can already guess, but then the intricate paintings that you see, if you take time to just go through the place, try to understand what this place is trying to tell, then you'll have numerous stories to write. So that
Yeah.
is one place I would definitely want people to visit.
Yeah, definitely, and especially these paintings you called out, right? When I was very, very fascinated by some of these paintings, especially the ones at the entrance. Apparently, they're called as the Tanka paintings, right? They're very popular in Tibetan origin paintings, and just the monastery in general as well, right? The interiors as well, very, very colorful. Yeah,
Right,
Tanisha,
right.
compared to some of the others I've seen. Obviously, even I haven't visited too many monasteries, but this one I found that very, very colorful, and like you were saying, one would associate a monastery with spirituality, calmness, peace, all of that. It does definitely offer all of that, but along with that, it has some brilliant uh, paintings, architecture, all of that, and scenic views as well, right? Like you mentioned, the highest point in Mirik as well, so it gives you a wonderful view of the town beneath as well as Kanchenjunga mountain ranges too. So definitely
Right.
make sure to spend some time here. And to Tanisha's point, if you're visiting here early during the early hours or even in the evenings, there's usually prayers that happen around this time, so you can experience those as well. Just make sure you kind of respect the privacy of monks when they're going through their prayers and stuff. But otherwise, it's a great opportunity to watch up close the life of monks, and their day to day, right? How it goes by in these monasteries.
Yes,
So
and
yeah.
one can also indulge in conversations with them. So when I think of Mirik, all I can think of is the best option to slow travel, to
Right.
actually indulge in the experience that this place has to offer, and not just travel to check off items from the bucket list, but actually travel to know more about the place, about the culture that is there, about the language. Mirik has a very scenic backdrop, so all of that just adds on to, experiencing this town more than just seeing it as a transit town, more than just visiting the lake and moving further to Darjeeling. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. And yeah, I think in the first part of the conversation, we covered off actually the way a tourist would, right? I go to a few points of interest in Mirik. But yeah, I'm eager to also find out a little bit more about just your overall trip and stay at Hamroghar, right? I'm
Right.
sure that was also very different. So why don't you share a little bit more about that? Obviously, you visit these places from time to time, but in general, like you said, your trip was more laid back and slow travel. So, what are some of the activities you indulged in while staying at Hamrogar?
So, while we were staying at Hamrogar, the first reason why I wanted to actually experience the stay there was because they, being the only one of the only homestays who actually indulge in promoting responsible tourism. So, and that was a very good initiative that I felt like. They try to avoid all sorts of single use plastic within their homestay. So it was quite fascinating to see that in a small town like Mirik, they are trying to make a change in how people travel. So they use glass bottles to serve water. Also, their terrace garden is beautifully decked up with upcycle forms of gardening. And when you visit the Hamroghar's terrace garden, you'll see they have used old shoes as flower pots. They are trying to actually reduce out on the waste that they create within the homestay. And also, through their page, I could see that they really hold a good expertise of Mirik. Since the first day of our stay at Hamroghar, it was quite interesting to see that the food that they offered was not anything that we could get in Kolkata or in any other part of India. It was a different experience altogether. The food was very thoughtfully made, so that we could have that experience of having Nepali cuisine. Apart from that, we also went out on multiple hiking trails, some through the forest, some through smaller villages. We also visited tea estates, and they also hold a lot of experiences around flora and fauna, photography walks. So the highlight would be how much they are well aware of the town and talking about the history, talking about the culture. And another thing that we came to know while we were staying at Hamroghar was about the India Nepal land border crossing. So that experience we couldn't have known if we would have stayed at a hotel. That is something locals do. So let's say if locals want to get something from Nepal or get a specific type of chilies, like it's called the Dolma chilies. It's known to be one of the hottest variety of chilies. So if
Right.
someone wants to get that, they'll cross the border, get it at a cheaper price. So all these things, all these little things of living in Mirik, what's the life like? We couldn't have got this if we would have booked a stay at a hotel.
Yeah, it definitely does sound like a very, very fulfilling experience as well. And talking about food, right? Since you kind of brought that up, like how is this different? I think perhaps had like maybe one or two occasions where I've got a chance to try out Nepali cuisine, and this was also in a restaurant. So again, it might be a very standard offering. How was your experience like living with the family? What kind of food were they serving you? And was there anything either in terms of similarities or stark differences that you found between the cuisines?
So there were a couple of similarities when I talk about Bengali cuisine and Nepali cuisine, but then there were also certain things that were different. So maybe the preparation is different, or the spices that they add is different, or it's very unique to the local variety of spice that's available. So these little flavors actually made it a very interesting experience for us. Like they offered a lot of dishes when it came to squash. Like that
Okay.
is something I hadn't had in the plains of Bengal. So I was introduced to this variety of like squash, particularly in Mirik. In Mirik, you get like you have access to Tibetan cuisine also, as well as Nepali cuisine, and you also find Bengali cuisine. So it's a good mix. Like for someone who's traveling from a different state altogether, a lot will get to experience a lot of these type of cuisine. So that is interesting for me.
Yeah, especially with like the very strategic location, right? This is kind of like you mentioned. very close to the Nepal border. So even in terms of the population, there is a lot of these tribes that live on either side of the border, right? Gurkhas, for example, is a good one to use, and similarly, like you mentioned, even because it's a part of West Bengal, obviously there is the Bengali influence as well, and then the Buddhist influence through the Tibetan monks and their monasteries and stuff like that. So a
Right.
lot of things have a like almost a confluence given this very strategic location as well. So I'm glad that you got to experience that. In general, the food, is it more roti and like side dishes like you mentioned squash or pumpkin and things like that, or is it more rice in there as a part of their staple?
So, roti is not really a thing. Like, it's not majorly a thing. It's mostly rice and a lot of other side dishes. So, they'll have achar, like pickle, and they'll have rice, they'll have dal, a curry, uh, and a dry side dish. Is similar to how we have in the rest of India, but then the taste is different. So it's not like Bengali cuisine is known to be a little more on the sweeter side, but Nepali cuisine, it has a tangy taste also to it.
Okay, very interesting. And just talking about the land border as well, did you actually get a chance to cross over, Tanisha, and just check out
Yes,
the border, the markets across the border and things like that?
right. We did that. We did the land border crossing, and it was very hassle free. All you have to do is, if they ask, if the officials ask you for an ID card, you have to show your Aadhaar card. And if you're in a private taxi, the taxi driver takes care of all of it. They don't even check what you're carrying. So that way, I think that's the relationship that we have at the border.
Right.
And it was pretty easy. So we showed our documents and then we crossed the border. And we were at Ilam district of Nepal. When we crossed the border, it was there were barely any differences, and the language was the same, the food was the same,
Yeah.
and even the markets, like the produce that we have, was same. So yeah, we couldn't see feel much of a difference.
Right, right, right. Yeah, I think that's one key thing or a very unique thing as well, right? Borders are pretty hassle-free. Otherwise, we usually associate borders and border crossings to a lot of paperwork, a lot of waiting
Right,
lines, and things like that. But yeah, this is very hassle-free. And as an Indian citizen, you basically do not even require a passport, right? You could just show ID
right.
proof and cross on to the other side into Nepal. So yeah, definitely if you're living or if you're staying in Mirik as a part of your trip, make sure to go and experience some of these markets on the other side as well. I read about this one Pashupati Nagar, I believe that's one of the
Yes.
popular border towns also, right, on the other side.
Yeah, so Pashupati Nagar is in Ilam district, and that's the market I'm referring to.
Oh,
So
okay.
when you, like, in the market, all you majorly get is garments and basically apparel.
Right.
So it's pretty fancy what you get, and if you're going there, you have to be very good at bargaining. So if you are good at it, then you'll definitely grab a lot of good stuff
Good
for a
deals, yeah.
cheaper price. Yeah. So we actually shopped at Mirik also, and we shopped at the border also. We found, if you're good at bargaining, the Mirik markets or the market in the outskirts of Mirik are cheaper than the ones across the border.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah, like while we are talking about these markets, right? Yeah, tell us a little bit more about Mirik Bazaar as well. That's, I guess, one of the popular markets within Mirik, right?
So Mirik Bazaar is in the central part of Mirik, and it's very interesting to see because you find in the bazaar you find everything, like right from vegetables, fruits, local bakeries to handicrafts, decor items, and they are very cheap. So the price of the decor items, food is pretty reasonable, but that of garments is a little on the higher side.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. And yeah, I found like a number of these very cool looking bakeries and cafes as well. Did you have a chance to visit any of those?
So we had a chance to visit a bakery called Ajmer Bakery. If you're visiting Mirik and if you're going to Ajmer Bakery, do try out on their cookies and their biscuits. They are out of the world. Like they'll melt in your mouth. It's that delicious. So definitely give it a try.
Yeah, definitely make sure to try out some of the bakeries just to see how they might be different to some of the other places you might have visited. And yeah, to Tanisha's point, a lot of things like souvenirs or woolen clothes or stoles, bags, all of those things are what you'll primarily get in these markets and in the Mirik Bazaar specifically. And obviously, you don't forget about the tea, right? Given that it has a lot of tea estates and all of that, a lot of stores sell tea as well. So make sure you try out some of that. Now, going back to just your experience at the homestay, right, Tanisha, you did mention that gardening was one of the things that Hamrogar was had a very good approach to, and how they had kind of upcycled a lot of things to use for their gardening purposes. One interesting
Right.
thing I found about was even while I was looking up was a lot of these orange orchards. Apparently, America is very popular for these orange orchards, and if you get a chance, definitely try visiting to one of these. There's a Pahilo Gaon stand that is very famous, and overall Mirik produces even for from West Bengal standards like lot of oranges, right? So it's popular for these orange orchards. I don't know if you had a chance to either pass through some of these or even visit some of these, Tanisha.
So we did pass through one of these, but we didn't really pay a visit specifically to the orchard. So another thing I would say is, like, if whenever you are looking at slow travel and you want to actually experience the place, the key to it lies in visiting the markets. Even though it might seem very basic, but then the this entire process of checking out the local produce and learning what it is called in the local language, it like adds a lot of flavor to the place and your experience. So definitely give it a try when you visit Mirik.
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, good way of trying out different things, but also meeting a lot of people, right? Because so many people from different parts of Merrick kind of converge to these markets. So a good chance to one interact with the folks, or just see how people go about their daily lives in terms of trade or businesses and stuff like that. I think yeah, markets are. Definitely a good point to learn a lot of things about the locals and the local way of life. So wonderful that you got a chance to visit that. Any other points of interest or just experiences that we might have missed out or not called touched upon so far, Tanisha?
So another experience that you would like anyone who visits Mirik would love doing is just going on unplanned hiking trails. There are a plenty of hiking trails in and around Mirik. It's just fascinating to just choose one and go without any plan in your mind. That will it might lead you to a smaller village. It might lead you to a place that's completely offbeat, a place that has scenic views. So we did a couple of these hikes with our local hosts at Hamroghar, and we went to a neighboring village called Saureni. So Saureni had a very different view. So from Mirik, when we saw, we could see the high peaks and the Kanchenjunga peak. But then when we went to Saureni, we could see the rolling hills that actually offer you views of the upper towns. Like Ghum is one of the town. Then Kurseong is also a very popular tourist destination. So you get to see the view of Kurseong also from Saureni.
Yeah, definitely. I think those are also some good call outs. Basically, what I'm getting from your trip is don't plan on anything, just go there and take it day by day. And your local hosts will actually help out a lot in terms of providing you with suggestions and taking you on such experiential hikes and things like that. But even beyond that, there's a few points of interest that we covered, right from the monastery to the lake to these tea estates and stuff like that. So if you have time and if you want to indulge, there's definitely those places to go and check out as well. And obviously, it's a no-brainer to make sure that one visits the markets, right? Be it on the Mirik side or the Indian side of the border, to or the Nepalese side of the border. There's a bunch of these markets as well that one should definitely go and check out. Awesome. As we start wrapping this up, Tanisha, any final thoughts on your trip from Mirik that you'd like to call out?
While we were planning the trip to Mirik, my parents were very specific on, traveling a bunch of, like, going to a bunch of these hill towns. And I was very adamant about, let's just do Mirik for a good week or so. And now that we recall our trip, we are so glad to, now it's like we know Mirik inside out. So we are aware of the lanes, we know what is there in Mirik, we know which shop to go to. So we feel like we belong to Mirik in a certain way. Also, with the help of our local host, we know people in Mirik now, and they introduced us to a few more local families. So this entire experience wouldn't have been the same had we not traveled slow, had we just seen it as a transit town. I would like to say that when you're planning a trip to Mirik, take it slow. Take it as a trip that you would take when you are actually looking for a detox, when you just want to pursue a creative hobby, let's say, or you just want to spend some time with yourself, or you want to give back to the society in a way where you volunteer with the monastery, something on those lines. Don't do it for the gram, or don't do it for just to take pictures or just to visit a town. Do it in a way that is responsible. Do it in a way that will actually help you take memories from that place and not just pictures.
Yeah, I think that's wonderfully put. Couldn't have said it any better. And if you want to follow and keep up with such other trips and such other accounts of Tanisha's travel, you can definitely visit her blog and check it out. It's at stepsandstreets.com. Make sure to check out her blog, and obviously, we'll make sure to include Tanisha's Instagram and other social media handles as well, so you could keep in touch and follow on her journeys. Thanks so much, Tanisha. I think it was wonderful. We learned something new today about a place that I'd never heard of before this. And also how important, just in terms of the beauty of the town, right? I think until you get some time to stay there and interact with the locals there, you won't actually appreciate it as much as you have done, and also understand it as much, right? Like you mentioned, most people would just consider this as a transit town and just pass through. And I'm glad that you got this opportunity to slow travel. Thank you so much, Tanisha. It was a pleasure to have you on the Muzaffar Stories.
Thank you so much. It was indeed a pleasure from my end as well. Thank you.
That was yet another great episode on the Muzaffar Stories. Make sure to show us some love by sharing the podcast with your friends and family. We are on Instagram and Twitter at Muzaffar Stories. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM podcast app or the website. Follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram.